And then about the tortures of the damned being self-incurred, so that's all right. Well, in any ordinary court that was confronted by a defendant who pleaded guilty and who yes. Well, I wish I was shouting. Yes. Yes, self-incurred. Well, it seems to me that anyone who with his open eyes refused to do what an omnipotent being said, knowing that he was going to be tortured just not for a few days, like Saddam Hussein, the earthly Saddam Hussein's victims were, but forever, it would be prima facie evidence, and every American divorce lawyer would be in there pitching again to say that the balance of the man's mind deserved, and he couldn't have formulated, do the Americans use the phrase, mens rea? So back to the point, Dr. Craig thought that I was saying, well, it's a quote from him on another occasion, but so long as people are free, there's simply no guarantee that everyone in that world would be freely saved. Sure, God could force everyone to repent and be saved by overpowering their wills, but that would be a sort of divine rape, not their being freely saved. It is logically impossible to make someone do something freely. Yes, of course there is, but I didn't say that God should coerce people, force them to do it. I said that God, the omnipotent God, could be able to make people such that they would freely choose. Now, you may say, this is the doctrine of predestination. And of course, only Calvinists believe that. Not true. This view that it made perfectly good sense to say, and indeed it was the truth to say, that God guided the wills both of the saved and the damned is found in, for instance, Aquinas. I quote, I've got a lot of quotations here, but still we'll stick with one. God alone can move the will as an agent without doing violence to it. Some people, not understanding how God can cause a movement of our will in us without prejudicing the freedom of the will, have tried to explain authoritative texts wrongly. That is, they would say that God works in us, and to wish and to accomplish means that he causes in us the power of willing, but not in such a way that he makes us will this or that. These people are, of course, look you, opposed quite plainly by authoritative texts of Holy Writ. For it says in Isaiah, quote, Lord, you have worked all our work in us. Hence we received from God not only the power of willing, but its employment also. Calvin, of course, and Luther too, maintain substantially the same position. But to his great credit, we need to take special note of Luther's insistence that this total divine control abolishes none of the familiar humanly crucial differences. Thus, in his De Servo Arbitrio concerning the enslaved will, he wrote, quote, I did not say of compulsion, a man without the Spirit of God does not do evil against his will under pressure, as though he were taken by the scruff of his neck and dragged into it, like a thief or a footpad being dragged off against his will to punishment. But he does it spontaneously and voluntarily. Right? But, again, to his credit, and unlike Aquinas, the reformer was appalled by the so pellucidly perceived implications. And his response was, the highest degree of faith is to believe he is just, though his own will makes us proper subjects for damnation. and seems, in the words of Erasmus, to delight in the torments of poor wretches, and to be a fitter object for hate than for love. If I could by any means understand how this same God can yet be merciful and just, there would be no need for faith. So, Luther addressed himself to the question, why then does he not alter these evil wills in which he moves? He addresses himself to precisely the question that I was raising. Understandably, if unsatisfactory, the person, Erasmus, who'd raised the question, simply gets the answer, it is not for us to inquire into these mysteries, but to adore them. If flesh and blood take offense here and grumble, well, let them grumble. They will achieve nothing. Grumbling will not change God. And however many of the ungodly stumble and depart, the elect will remain. Had we pressed Luther further, he would undoubtedly have referred to a key passage from his favourite epistle, the Epistle to the Romans. Therefore hath he mercy upon whom he will have mercy, and whom he will he hardeneth. Thou wilt say unto me, why doth he yet find fault? For who hath resisted his will? Nay, but, O man, who art thou that repliest against God? Shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, why hast thou made me thus? What if God, willing to show his wrath and to make his power known, endured with much long suffering the vessels of wrath fitted to destruction, and that he might make known the riches of his glory on the vessels of glory which he had before prevented? Well, I think that will be a useful thing to have on the record in this discussion, lest we have any more of this suggestion that an omnipotent being could not. There's a logical inconsistency. It's an absurd idea that he could produce people to do exactly what he wanted to do, because here you have biblical authority, the authority of three of the great doctors of the church, Luther, Aquinas, and Calvin. Well, it's good enough to be going on with, I think. Yes. I think that's enough for one. Let me be a little brief for a change in one of these things. I think that's something to think about.